I think we're here.
All right. Okay, I think we are live.
I think so.
All right. So
Happy
as we
day.
get settled, because it's been quite a while since we've been live on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. So welcome everyone as you come in and you're seeing this on the replay. We are excited that you've landed and that you are taking a moment to be with us today. Hopefully you'll stick with us. I am Dr. Isela Garcia.
And I'm Nina Vasquez.
And we are the Love Being community. We actually have a community that Nina and I do together in Circle, which is a community-based app. And so before we get started on our topic today, I just want to invite you all, if anything that we say and what we share and you like our vibe, let us know, because we would love for you to be a part of our growing community of like-minded people who are really interested in healing so that we can connect to our intuitive, highest, truest selves. And today what we're going to talk about is really exploring the concept of neuroception and intuition, because both of those tend to sort of, I think, bump up against one another at times. And I think it's important for us to understand the differences between these two things. And you maybe have never even heard of the word neuroception. And so we want to explore that a little bit. And let me tell you where this came from. I recently had a couple conversations with people who have said to me, and it's namely when we're in relationships with people, when we're in relationships, whether that is a friendship or even family members or a partnership. Sometimes things will show up and we'll be like, oh, my intuition was telling me. And it'll be like, ring alarm bells and, oh my goodness, you need to do this or don't do this. And I'm like, well, that's not really how intuition works. Intuition comes in a little bit differently than that. So I wanted to just kind of talk about that. And any thoughts about that, Nina, before we get kind of going on the topic?
Well, I think let's start with defining them. So
Yes.
tell us what intuition is, and then share with us about neuroception too.
Actually, I'm going to start with neuroception first, because so neuroception is our body's built-in surveillance system, basically. It's a part of our nervous system that constantly scans for cues of safety or danger. And it's happening without us even realizing it. And it's not a bad thing and it's not wrong. It's just how our body basically keeps us alive. But the truth of it is that for those of us who've experienced trauma, pain, betrayal, neuroception can get wired to see threat where there may no longer be one. And so sometimes what happens is, I'll give you an example. It kind of feels like a silly example, but not a silly example. So my mom didn't let me watch Mr. Rogers when I was a little girl. And she just thought Mr. Rogers was like a pedophile because he was kind and loving and responsive to children. Well, fast forward many years, I learned that there's an uncle in my family who had energy that was gentle and kind and nurturing. And he was the pedophile. I mean, there were many, but he was like the main pedophile in the family. And so for her, she saw this man who showed up as kind and gentle and loving, and her neuroception was like, danger, danger, danger. That is not a good person. And I was very confused by this, because this person, this Mr. Rogers person, felt very nice to me, and he was very
Mhm.
loving, and it felt good to watch him talk to the neighbors, right? And the all
Mhm.
the neighbors in the
Yeah.
neighborhood. And I used to have to
Mhm.
sneak watching Mr. Rogers because for her, that meant he was a bad person.
Mm.
And so that old story of hers became kind of the filter by which she experienced other people. And that's part of her neuroception. Her body was saying, we need to stay safe. We need to stay safe. That person right there who, like, just, I'm telling you, this uncle, he's like my great uncle. He was the kind and loving and all of those
Mm.
things. I don't want to say same energy because there was a little
Yeah.
creepiness to it, but
Uh-huh.
yeah. So that's an example of how neuroception can kind of get in the way of,
Mm.
or that we would think it's our intuition versus what it actually is neuroception. Okay,
Yeah, and
and
so if you're listening, like if you're listening in live or even on the replay, take a moment now and just think, as Isela shares now, what is intuition? Think about, because I know that brought me like a memory recently. And think about if you've had a situation where there was an automatic conclusion created by the body. Yeah. And just bring that into your awareness as we continue to talk about this topic, because I think that's going to really help all of us come to more of a discernment between them.
yeah, yeah, it's hard to, and this is why our healing journey is so critically important, because it's hard, because we do not always understand why we're getting these alarms, these, this something just feels off, right?
Mm-hmm.
These red flags might actually be old wounds speaking. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And the term was actually coined by Dr. Stephen Porges, from the polyvagal theory. And so he was the one that started to really kind of explore this idea of neuroception. Now, intuition, on the other hand, is subtle. And it's a sacred knowing that really comes from a deeper place within us. Now, when we really delve deeper into our intuition, we understand that it's the part within us that's connected to source, that is divine intelligence. But this quiet sense of knowing doesn't shout or panic. It's sort of a whisper. It's a
Mm-hmm.
knowing. It's calm, it's grounded, and it's clear. And so sometimes, especially those of us who have a lot of pain and a lot of trauma and a lot of hurt, sometimes it's hard to reach this space of intuitive knowing because of all of the old stories that get in the way of us being able to access it. So neuroception happens below our level of conscious awareness. It's not really something we think about, and it's really biological. It's in our nervous system, and it's not really aligned with our higher guidance. Now, that's not to say it's not important, because it does give us these, information, but it's the opportunity for us to explore deeper. Is this truly an unsafe situation, or could I be layering over the situation based on my past experiences? Does that make
Mm-hmm.
sense?
Mm-hmm. It does. Yeah. And I wrote down so many things like, okay, so I will ask a question about this because I think it'll be helpful. You said intuition is a sacred knowing. It's quiet. It's not in a rush. I wrote down the word forceful because I've had situations in my life where it felt like source, God, my soul was kind of pushing me to do something. And I would say that is intuition. But from what I hear you saying is it's not forceful. It's a quiet knowing. that's not pushy. What would you say to that?
Well, I'm not going to tell anybody that, what your
Yeah.
experience is right or wrong.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I know from my experience and the people that I've supported through this journey of tapping into our intuition is that it is a gentle whisper. It's a knowing of, this is a bad situation for me. And I feel it. And I can't tell you why. And I can't give you all of the pros and the cons. I mean, that's my intellectual awareness. The pros and the cons is my intellectual knowing. It could be in
Mhm.
part my neuroception as well. Like, these are the red flags,
Mhm.
and these are things that are super concerning to me. But your intuition is a subtle knowing. And an easy way to sort of lean into this and practice this experience is to think about what your yes means, and what, or not means, but how it feels, and what a no feels like. So
Mhm.
what is your yes? So let's think of, I don't know, what could we think of that you go like absolutely yes to?
Mhm.
Maybe something that you love to do, or love to eat, or love to
Coffee?
coffee. You love coffee? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, for
So
me, I
think
love
of your
coffee.
most favorite coffee in the world, like your favorite perfectly made coffee. Just imagine having that in your hand.
Mm. Okay.
And what time of day is this? Is it morning? Is it midday? Is it evening?
Always morning. It's very hot, the coffee
Very
itself.
okay.
I like it scalding hot.
Mm. And do you
There's
smell it?
some nature. Yeah, there's some nature outside the windows. I can smell the coffee. And it's like a yes until it gets cold, and then it's a no.
Okay. So
Yeah.
that feeling where you're just like, yes, 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 this feels good. Yes. Like,
Mhm,
you have to
mhm.
know what your yes is.
Mm.
Now let's think of something that you detest. Like, just like,
Mm.
ugh, ugh, I don't want to eat that. I don't want to smell it. Just the thought of it makes me, ugh.
Milk?
Really? You don't like cow's milk?
No.
Oh my goodness, that's
0%.
fascinating. Okay, okay. So can the smell of milk kind of trigger something within you?
I guess so. I had a little bit of a flutter in my lip, can't even redo it, but I did notice that, kind of like a turn up of my lip.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, I felt the yes kind of all through here.
Mhm.
And now I just feel like the no in my face a little bit around my
Mhm.
mouth.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
recognizing. So for me, a no would be an old story of mine. So an old story of mine is canned spinach. The smell of canned spinach is just revolting to me. But that sensation, this is why connecting to our bodies is so significantly
Yeah.
important, because when we start to understand the sensations in our body and the messages that it conveys, it helps us in being able to make some decisions in our life. So once you know your no, or you're
Mm.
like, ah, so think of a situation, any situation that you are in, and kind of lean into that a little bit. And you go, okay, does this feel like my no, or does it feel like my yes? And that's
Yeah.
sort of the beginning. It's the beginning of starting to really discern between that neuroception, that reactive, like, oh, red flag, red flag, red flag, when that could actually be an old story, as
Yeah.
opposed to intuitive guidance.
I have seen this with humans. So men for me would be humans that I can practice this with, right? So I've seen this where I don't know why, but I'm a no to that man. I don't know why, but like it's a no.
Mhm.
You know, completely a no. Now I haven't really practiced to see if like, okay, is this man reminding me of someone? No, I shouldn't say I haven't. I did this at an in-person event once where it was a trigger, right? It was more neuroception, like the smell, um, his hair on his arms and his chest, right? So there was some neuroception happening. But I have other situations where it's just a no. There's just a knowing. And it doesn't feel like neuroception. So that's really fun to think about.
Yeah.
And that no, when I'm thinking about that no, it's more in my belly than it is my mouth. I think the mouth, there's something about the milk and I don't know.
Yeah, this practice, though, is really important. The practice of connecting to our bodies and understanding the messages that it conveys, because our bodies are constantly sending us messages. What does it feel like to feel discomfort for you? Where does it feel like to feel joy for you? See, the challenge when we are not connected, because a lot of us avoid feeling, right? We avoid feeling the bad shit. So anytime we start to feel a little bit of discomfort or overwhelm or sadness, we want to avoid it. And this is where we can easily distract ourselves in lots of different ways, right? So this avoidance that we do also blocks us from feeling the good stuff. So you can't just filter out the bad stuff. You also filter out the good stuff, like love and connection and joy and peace and balance and all the things that we are seeking in our lives. When we don't allow ourselves to really explore these concepts and these feelings and the stuff that's coming up for us and unpack some of the things that are blocking us from tapping into our intuition, we're literally blocking our ability to also connect to the things that are just divinely inherent in who we are, which is love and peace and joy and balance and all of the things that make us whole.
Something just landed for me. So I always say, your soul whispers, and then she's going to get louder. And she's going to get louder is what I say. And this is, based on my own experience. She just gets louder and louder. And what I'm realizing, what came to me just now, is it's not that she gets louder. It's that when you start healing and moving some of these energies, wounds that you've had in your body, you're making it so that you can hear her more. Like you can really oh, I hear you. It's very clear. Yeah. That doesn't mean the mind doesn't get to work and try to argue the whisper, Yeah. But when this is why the mind wants you to stay disconnected from the body, the ego, right? It's like, let's just keep you out of the body and up here thinking. So that way we can just keep running the show. Once you start listening to your body, it's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, what you just said, I think if I'm remembering correctly, what you said was once we start to heal and once we start to move some of this energy out, what actually happens is, we are made of light and of love. And then we become freer of the heaviness of what is just kind of built into this third dimensional experience. And that's when people say of light and love, it's because we are literally made of light and love. And so what happens is we do start to release some of those, the heavier energy that sort of gets in the way of us being able to access that. But in that journey of releasing and healing and integrating and all of the things that we do, because there is no one way, there are lots of ways to approach this whole journey that we're on. It does start, what you said is that she shouts, that she becomes louder. It's not that it becomes louder. It is that you are now paying attention in a way that you were not able to before you started this experience. And I just had a conversation with somebody recently about journaling. I had told her journal, write all of your things. And she said to me right away, she's like, this journaling doesn't work for me. I hate the journaling. But the truth of it is all the stuff sort of was coming to surface, and it was harder and harder to ignore it. And it was harder and harder to keep going on with life in the way that she had gone on with life, because all of the stuff was now coming to a place where she gets to explore it and be with it and really start to lean into her own intuitive guidance once she starts really recognizing the source of what's really happening within. And so it sometimes, for a lot of us, it doesn't just stop. It's like once you open that little box, the box starts to, like, all the stuff starts to fly out, and you're like,
Yeah.
no.
Wait.
Back inside.
Yeah. Which is like brings me to the word capacity, right? Because so when I was in my 30s, I was in a relationship, and looking back, I would always say that I heard the whisper from my soul that I shouldn't be here. I should not be in this relationship. And I probably, looking back, I would say I knew from the very beginning. But at that time, what was happening? Lots of neuroception, survival, right? Survival was the top priority of my nervous system. And I didn't have the capacity when my soul whispered a little, whisper. I didn't have the capacity to say, let me just use an example. Of maybe it's come up to me recently. If somebody says something, they ask you, why are you settling, for example? I didn't have the capacity to look at the journal about this question. I'm too busy being in survival to say, I have the capacity to say, am I settling? Why am I choosing to stay here? I did not have that capacity to do that. I was just operating off, unhealed wounds, basically, unhealed belief systems, and a lot of nervous system dysregulation at that time. So it would make sense that, like, I didn't have access to my intuition, even though she was there.
Yeah, most people don't have immediate access to their intuition when there's a significant amount of trauma. And, our neuroception's job is to keep us safe, right? And so I think that too often we are so wrapped up in the pain and the hurt that awareness is very, very difficult initially. But you said something really important. There was a little part of you, a small, little, tiny, tiny part of you that was like, oh, this may not be good. This may not be a good thing for me, right? Yeah. But what happened? So, like, how early did you recognize, like, oh, this might be not good? Or did you not? Were you like, this is what's familiar? I know how to do this? Like, what was?
Well, so our marriage was 13 years. I left him a couple of times before we got married and after we got married. So of course I knew, like, and then I would take action and I'd leave. But what would happen is survival would kick in, and all the beliefs and how am I going to do this on my own? Or, maybe I had these very deep limiting beliefs about myself and very low self-worth. So I would just go back, not thinking that I deserved anything differently. I was broken. I wasn't good enough. Why would I deserve anything else? I also couldn't be alone. And all you had to do was just tell me that you love me, and that would be good enough. Yeah. I had a very low bar for, like, my wounded self had a low bar for, I'm trying to find the words. The words aren't coming to me. It's just like this. There was not a large list of red flags, you know. It's just like,
Mm-hmm.
well, I'm whatever I believed, maybe I'm supposed to. I think this can also happen, which sometimes sounds like intuition. I've heard this from women, like, well, I'm supposed to like help him through this time, and he's struggling. I'm supposed to help him get through this time. I've heard this many times, and that was sometimes my story. But I think the other, if I really looked back and I was honest with myself, I think the reasons why I stayed were, low self-worth, not believing that I could financially make it on my own once we had a child and everything, not having that belief in myself. Right. And so to just settle for like, okay, we'll make it work. And then there was also like this whole wounded self, like I wanted my daughter to have both parents because I didn't, and all this whole story from the past. Right. But all along my soul's like, no, girl, no. Like, and I think looking back now, I always heard that. I just didn't listen. And that was another thing I wrote down was the word trust. I wrote down trust. You said something earlier. I don't think that I learned, if you don't have access to your intuition, I think access and trusting your access or trusting the whisper is two different things.
Yeah.
Right? So trust needs to be built, I think, over time. Or maybe it's a decision. I just choose to trust. For me, in my current reality, it's more of choosing and working to discern.
I think learning to trust yourself is returning to our wholeness, because see, we come in trusting ourselves. We come in trusting our own, like into this lifetime as young babies, like I'm hungry and this is like, I need to eat right now. And we know that we're hungry. And it's the adults who then in our circle, those who care for us, teach us to not trust ourselves. Teach us that, oh, you're okay. You're okay. You're fine. But really, I'm not. No, I'm not fine. No, you are fine. And so you need to eat right now. And we're like, but I'm not hungry. No, we're eating right now. And that's what we do. And so we learn to, in these very subtle ways that become bigger and bigger ways, we learn how not to trust ourselves.
Yeah.
And so we get these little messages, these intuitive hits, right? That are subtle and that are just gentle little reminders or gentle knowings. But because we are in the process of not trusting ourselves, because we were taught that may not be for our well-being and not be for the best, we need to trust the opinions, the thoughts, and the ideas of others because they know better than you do.
Yes.
It's a message that's globally taught to us. The adults know better than you do. And in fact, I've worked with a lot of adults who don't know shit. My own adults in my world did not know a lot. And so it's a false message that we receive. And so we look to others for that guidance. But we have heard these subtle little messages that I think the key is to really lean into them, to be curious about them, and to begin to practice the process of trusting ourselves, trusting the intuition. But as you mentioned before, what happens is fear steps forward, which fear comes in as ego, which is edging God out. And so fear steps forward, and all of the reasons why not to trust ourselves shouts loud. And what you mentioned, I think is a very true statement for a lot of people. How will I, in terms of relationship, how will I do this by myself? Financially, I can't afford to get a place of my own. I have children. I can't leave my children here. It's like there's so many things that then show up and they're screaming at us. And so we go back to, this is where I need to stay because anything outside of this is too much and too scary. I have another. Go ahead, Nina. But I do have another question. So go ahead and respond to that.
Oh, go ahead. I lost it.
Okay, so my question as you were talking is one of the things that I've always been very curious about is our awareness or beliefs, I guess, about our beliefs about what a relationship should look like. And I think that because you were talking about entering upon a relationship where you kind of knew that it wasn't a good thing for you, but I think so often many of us, because we didn't have good models of loving, responsive relationships, whatever we witnessed or whatever we've been exposed to becomes sort of what we think is an acceptable thing. And it's not just in romantic relationships. It can also be within our family structures, that it is okay for the elder of the family to be hurtful and harmful and say things that are just mean. It is okay for now I'm not saying like in a romantic relationship, in a partnership, if whatever rules or ideas that the partnership has, you get to decide that. But I think so many women go into relationships not even understanding or aware that they can help shape how this relationship can be structured. It's just, this is what a man does, or this is what I do, or this is, do you know what I'm trying to get to?
Yeah. And I think I'm going to grab my notebook, because this morning I wrote quite a bit of pages, and it's wild that you said that, because I came to this realization that it was wild. My father, not sure, I wrote 3 pages, so I may not be able to find it, but I came to this big aha moment where I realized my father was abusive, not in the same abusive way that I attracted, because I told myself I don't want that kind of abuse. Like, I was like, I'm not going to date my father, but he was. Now, I'm struggling talking about him right now. That's interesting. But I will. He was verbally and abusively, physically very harsh. And to them back then, that was the way they disciplined. That was how they were taught to. It was like, I'm going to spank you because I love you, So recognizing that is how the lineage parented, not excusing it. But from a little girl's standpoint, I learned from my father that it was okay to accept treatment like this from men, right? To be abusive in any way. I learned that my opinion didn't matter. I learned to be small and quiet and be good. Right? I remember my ex-husband used to have this list going of what made a good wife. And with, his buddies or whatever. And I realized I was trying to fit this mold of a good wife. But I never got to decide what that meant, because I never thought I could. So yeah, I have no good examples in my life of what a healthy relationship was supposed to look like back then. Yeah. So the wounded, I need love outside of me to survive, she was in charge back then. Right.
And this is how I get love.
Right? This is how I get love. Yeah.
These are the ways that I have learned through the course of my experiences of life. Yeah. This is how I receive love that I so desperately crave, that I so desperately need.
Yeah. And I think it's different for everybody, Stella, right? Because, my upbringing as a young girl is very sexualized, right? So that was a lot that was intertwined in how I receive love. from humans in general. Yeah, so it's going to be totally different for everybody. But I think it's great to remember that beneath all of that, you still have a soul that's talking to you. That maybe not in thought, but in other ways. But you still have a knowing that you can access.
Yeah, and I think that for so many, this is such a fascinating topic for me, the part about what you are deserving of and what you believe should happen within a relationship, like how in any kind of relationship. I want to just state that because I've had so many conversations with people that have said to me, oh, but they're family. Yeah, they may be family, but it isn't ever acceptable in my mind for me for someone to mistreat me. It just isn't. And I'm a strong believer that I teach people how to treat me. Like I either make it an okay thing or I say that this isn't an acceptable thing to happen in my life. I don't feel like I have to compromise that. And I can still extend love. This is what people get very confused by. They say, well, that means you don't love your family. No, no, no. I can love someone. I can extend love. I can think about this person and see beyond the trials and the tribulations and the hurt and the pain and all of the things, the story. I can look at the story and recognize that this is a human experience and that these are human experiences that we have had based on our ancestral history, on the traumas that we've experienced. Like I recognize and acknowledge that. And I can still look beyond that and say, we are one. We are one. And I can have love for you in my heart. And at the same time, I can also say, this is what is acceptable to me and what is not acceptable to me in terms of the relationship that we have. And I don't care if we're blood related. I don't care if we are married. This is what is acceptable to me and how I should be treated. And so
when did you start deciding that? Was it like, because I find it so fascinating, our childhoods and what we came, like, it sounds like you made a decision very young that this was the way it was going to be. And it feels so conscious, but when did you decide this?
When did I decide? I remember, and I've shared this story if you've ever listened to any of our stories before. I remember when I was about 12, I recognized that the experience that I was living at home, which was an abusive home, physically and emotionally abusive, and my mom was the one who was abusive to me. I remember saying, all I have to do is survive this. All I have to do is survive this. And the moment I leave, the moment I can get out, I will. And so that experience, like I remember where I was in my room. I remember I was watching TV. I remember that I just have to survive. Now, I didn't know what that looked like, and I didn't know really what that meant. I just knew that I was going to be different and that I was going to have a different experience of life. Now, having said that, one of the things that my mom did teach me, and to the extreme, I kind of had to heal a bit from this, was that, no man should ever treat you like shit. Like no man should ever hurt you, harm you. And I don't know if I've ever shared this story, but there was a movie called The Burning Bed. Do you know The Burning Bed?
No.
It was it was a movie, and gosh, I wish I remember who played in it because she's a very well-known actress, but it was about a woman who was physically abused by her husband, and she had a couple children, and her mom loved her husband, like loved him. So he was physically abusive, and when he drank, he got particularly physically abusive. It was pretty bad. And she tried to leave him a few times, but when she left and was unsuccessful, it was bad. The abuse was worse. And she couldn't go to her mom for comfort because her mom would always tell him where she was. So her mom wasn't even her safe haven, right? So she had tried to run away with the kids a few times, and then one day she just was done with it. And so she tied him to the bed. And this was all plotting for quite a bit of time. She tied him to the bed, poured gasoline on him and the house, and torched the house up. And while he was tied to the bed, and drove away with the kids. Now, this used to, back in the day, we used to have like regular TV programming happened during the fall and the spring. And then during the summer, there were like these repeated movies that would show every year. And The Burning Bed was one of them.
Wow.
And my mom used to sit me down and we would watch The Burning Bed together.
Wow.
And she felt so strongly, and I don't even know if she was consciously aware of this, because, you know, she grew up in a very abusive situation, physically, emotionally, and sexually abused as a child. She didn't have any memories really of her childhood, but she felt very, very strongly that men were kind of like the evil of all evils. And so I grew up with thinking that, you know, I needed to protect myself and I needed to keep myself safe. And even if it meant, you know, tying someone up in the bed and killing them, you know, that's what you do. And so that was sort of the extreme that I grew up with. And I had to kind of, you know, lean away from that and recognize that, you know, that was her hurt and pain coming through. So I didn't come from the place of do all of these things for love. I came from the place of I have to protect myself from others, right? And so I have to do for myself. I have to be hyper independent. I have to do all of the things that really because I can only depend on me. So I come from such a different side of the spectrum than you do, right? Like I never looked at my husband, who we've been together 35 years. And I remember saying to him, yeah, I don't know if we're ever going to get married. Like, I don't know, like if I want to marry you, I kind of want to be with you, but I don't need you. Like I literally said that to him. And had he not joined the military, we wouldn't have ever gotten married. I mean, it's just easier to be in a relationship with somebody when you're in the service, when you're married, then, you know, because you can't move around with them. You can't, I mean, there's benefits that you get to being married. Had he not joined the military, I would probably not be married today. But I was just so hyper independent as a result of, you know, that experience as a child.
It's so interesting because as you're talking, I'm remembering my 20s, and I'm remembering that on the outside, if you asked me if I love myself, I was fierce I would say yes. I was, you know, I was in the Army. I was independent on all accounts. And, you know, I was definitely striving to be the best, you know. But I think that there was a big disconnect between my unconscious beliefs, you know, feelings, emotions about myself versus what I portrayed out in the world, because I also had to be perfect, I thought. So I was trying to be perfect, but deep down, I had no self-worth. No self-worth. And that, I think, you know, if that's you and you're listening, it's just a big invitation. And if you're like, no, I love myself, then just check in with your life right now. Right? Is your life indicative of that? Or are you settling? Are you staying in places that you kind of know is not good for you? You know? It's not to say it's good, bad, right, or wrong. It's just something to look at. Right? Like, and ask yourself, I think the biggest thing that can help you is just for you to tell yourself the truth. Because when I started doing work to find out, like, oh, what are my beliefs about myself? I think I was very shocked about them, because I would tell them to people like they were facts. Like, I'm not good enough. I'm broken. I mean, I literally believe these things. It's so hard for me to remember like how that felt, but like I literally believed those things about myself. And so when you look at them, you get to see them at the beginning, as I call them, the lies that became your truths. And they like dictated the rest of my life. So back to the trust thing, I'm circling back to the trust. When I first realized that my wounded self had created this lie, I couldn't trust myself anymore. Like, how can I trust myself? Look what I've created, right? Look what I have done. And there was a whole several years of like not being able to trust myself, outsourcing my decision making to somebody else because I couldn't trust myself. I'd like, if I got myself here, how could I trust myself? But what we have to remember is that whisper, that intuition source within us, they're still there. Mm-hmm. It hasn't gone anywhere. But we just have to do it. Keep going. Sorry.
There is a one of the tenets of A Course in Miracles is basically that that the way that like what has gotten us here, why we've landed here isn't what's going to get us out. And this is the process of learning to surrender to our highest self, our inner wisdom. But again, we have to be able to start to discern between what is neuroception, the thing that protects us, the thing that actually keeps us safe, the red flags, the things. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just the opportunity for us to be curious about why it's showing up in our life. Why has this been a part of our story? Why is it that could it be blocking me, or is it a true statement? Is it a true story? Like just to be curious about why it's showing up for us and to really start to pay close attention to those whispers, the knowings that do show up for all of us. And I think the more we understand that it doesn't come from a judgy place, that's the other thing. That's ego. The ego it feels judgy and reactive, sometimes fast. It's rooted in our survival instincts. Sometimes it's urgent, intense, and shame. It's all shame. Yeah, big time. It's based on our past experiences. And so I think that it's valid and it's valuable, right? Yeah. But it's really there for us to unpack. It's really for us to just explore it a little bit deeper and go, okay, is this something that serves me well? Or is this something that's getting in the way of me being able to trust my own intuitive knowing?
Yes. And I think also giving yourself permission to, this is something that I would say I spend too much time on the discerning part. And then, so what I'm working to give myself permission for is like, okay, so if I make a choice and it was neuroception and it wasn't my intuition, okay, it's all good, right? It's all good. Like, for example, I told you, Isel, I think, about the dentist thing. So I went to the dentist anyway, long story short, all is fine with the dentist. And then one day he looks a certain way and I'm like, oh no, I don't think this is the right dentist.
He looks at you a certain way. Yeah, that's different than he looks a certain way. Yeah.
He looked at me a certain way. And my body, it was almost like, oh, I think I'm not supposed to be at this dentist. I could spend a lot of time trying to figure out, is this neuroception? Is this just my knowing? And what happened right after, and this might be useful as well, I saw this in my mind. I'm getting the dental work because I saw him as I was walking in. Getting the dental work, and my mind is getting to work on like, oh, but if I if I go somewhere else, what if the wife calls me and asks me why I'm leaving? This is the people pleasing part, right? And so I thought, oh, this is the ego coming in, fear, 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 fear. And so when I left, I could spend a lot of time trying to discern. What I'm just saying is we don't need to spend a lot of time.
Mm-hmm.
You just trust. Because what's my loss? Right? If I just say, oh, it's time for me to go somewhere else, my loss is nothing. What do I gain? I gain trusting myself, whether it's neuroception or intuition.
Mm-hmm.
Trusting that I'm going to have my own back. That's kind of how I see it. But would you add anything to that, Isela?
I think that I think awareness of how we're showing up in the world, what we're feeling, what we're thinking, how we're making sense of things. I think awareness is really such a critical part of this sacred journey. And so the awareness that you were like, oh, here is something that happened, like I feel uncomfortable, right? Because he looked at you a particular way and there was you had a physiological response and that was uncomfortable. There was some level of discomfort there. And I would never say to somebody, ignore that. I would never, ever say to someone, this is completely, it wasn't your intuition. It was neuroception based on your own experiences. Well, no, it's showing up because it's there to protect you and to keep you safe. And so I think the key to this is learning how to trust yourself and learning to make decisions based on the information that's coming through you and the awareness of how you're making sense of things. There are some times I think that we react in situations that are not rooted in truth or intention, or I think it's not always intention, it's also impact. But I think that the exploration of things, if they continue to show up as patterns in our lives, is an opportunity for us. But I don't think we have to sit and go through discernment every single time. Right?
Definitely not. Yeah. But I love what you added, because I was thinking about just how many women and men, I don't want to say this doesn't happen to men, anyone, just anyone, how many times we make excuses for what our body knows, whether it's neuroception or intuition. The body knows often before the mind, and we will make excuses. And this was something I did a lot. And we kind of start to doubt ourselves because we have no reasonable explanation other than a knowing, right? I just have a knowing. Like we hear this all the time. I'm moving to XYZ state. Why? I don't know. I just have a knowing I'm supposed to move there. Right. But I think a lot of people in relationship, especially abusive relationships, the fear steps forward, the self-doubt steps forward, especially if you're being gaslit. It's like you cannot, it's so hard to discern. And so usually though, that is the part of you who's stepping forward to make the decision for you, usually. Right. Yeah. And I think you're right about awareness. We have to be aware. And it really starts with our body, right? We can be aware about what's happening in our body. I don't want to say it starts there. Part of it is our body.
I think that's hard for folks, though. I think the awareness that you may not be connected to your body may be a huge revelation to you. Yeah. Because we intellectualize our experience of life. Oh, I can tell you what happened to me when I was 4, and I can tell you why I do what I do because something happened to me when I was 12.
Yes.
And so we intellectualize our experience of life, and we don't have a deep awareness or connection to our body and our nervous system. Right. Yeah. And so that process is the very, very first step. But I'd like to offer sort of what I do when I'm kind of having a situation and I'm trying to figure out, okay, is this a red flag? Is this something I should, is it my body trying to protect myself or protect me? Is it intuition? And So one of the first things I do is when something happens, it's the awareness that I am now or could potentially be in a reactive state. I could be
Yeah.
emotionally charged. Something's showing up for me. I want to say something. I want to do something. I feel it in my body. And for me, sometimes it's my stomach clenches and my throat, particularly if it's something that has happened and I'm like having a need or fear to say something. I'm going to feel it in my throat.
Mhm.
Sometimes my heart starts to kind of race a little bit. So it just depends on what the situation is, but noticing for you what is showing up. So I will normally just pause and go, oh, something's happening here. And I actually do take a couple deep breaths. And these are belly breaths. So
Mhm.
usually I do at least 3, and I just take those very deep breaths and I pause. Okay. This pause is what separates us from reacting to
Mhm.
respond. Okay.
Mhm.
Keeps us from going what I call the freak out place.
Yeah.
And then what I do is I notice my body sensations intentionally. Like, when they show up for me, it's like, boom, they're there. Oh, hello. Right. But no, now I'm going to notice them intentionally. And I'm going to notice if I have tension somewhere, if something's contracted, if my heart is racing because I'm feeling fear or panic or uncertainty or doubt. And then I'm going to just notice, because it may not be that. It may be I feel centered and I feel more at ease, or I'm feeling like a sense of, I recognize this. Oh, I know this. I know this message. There's a difference between those two things. The first one is sort of like, alarm, alarm, alarm. And the second one is this is a deeper knowing. This is a recognition. Okay. Feel
Mhm.
different. Okay.
Mhm.
And then what I do if I'm really trying to make some decisions here is I ground and I really try to get present, because the ego or our thinking intellectual self is going to pull us from the present experience. It's going to pull us into an old story. It's going to pull us into fear. It's going to pull us into the future, what ifs. So I want to kind of set those aside and say, that's not really what's happening right now in this moment. And I'm going to ground myself in the present moment. So
Yeah.
I'm going to do any of the things that are comfortable for me when I'm grounding. And it may be just noticing what's around me. It may be feeling my body connecting to the earth, to the chair that I'm sitting in. It may just me be touching and feeling my physical form and just noticing my physical body. And
Yeah.
then I tap into my angels, guides, my highest self, whatever you call the all that is. I'm going to ask whose voice I am listening to. Whose voice do I hear?
Mm.
Whose voice do I hear? Is it the voice of the ego, my intellectual self, the part that is afraid of all of the things that could happen? Or am I leaning into and aligning with my divinity, source, my knowing, the truth of who I am? And so I feel into that. And I just let myself be with that experience. Do I always get the answer right away? Not always. Not always. Sometimes that just takes a little bit of practice. And so sometimes that means I'm going to sit quietly or just be fully present, even as I'm like washing dishes or making my
Mhm.
coffee. Just be fully present in the experience, because more times than not, if I can keep myself present, I'm going to get a sensation, a perception, a feeling, and a knowing that gives me the answer. But if I stay stuck in my head, playing out all of the possible scenarios, playing out my pain, playing out like all of the things that come with that story, I cannot hear my intuitive guidance.
Yeah, that's so good and such a reminder, right? We're not going to be able to hear. Yeah.
Right.
And it's because the intuitive guidance is the quiet one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mhm.
And for all of us, it comes differently. That's the other thing. Like for those of us who are mediums who like intentionally connect for others as well,
Yeah.
I think the way that I do it is a lot of connection through sensation. So I will say stuff like, I can feel you, I can feel heaviness in your chest. I can feel, because I'm connecting to you energetically. That doesn't come through in the same way for everybody. Sometimes it's a hearing, you hear something, it could be a song. Sometimes you smell something and it reminds you of something else, and there's your answer. Sometimes it comes in dreams. Sometimes it comes in just a knowing. But the knowing, I want to just remind you, the knowing feels rooted in love. The knowing isn't afraid, it's not reactive, and it's not urgent. The knowing is rooted in love.
That is so good to remember. And no matter how many times I've heard that, Isela, it is so good to remember. Say that again, because sometimes, both ways, I often hear source in thought. It sounds like myself. Sounds like my own thoughts. Sometimes I get just a knowing from, it's weird, it's the knowing and no thought comes from kind of right beneath my chest, but back. It's hard to explain. That's sometimes where I have just a knowing. But sometimes I have a thought and I can be like, oh, is this ego? But once you check, all you have to do is just check to see. There's only one qualifier. Is it love or not? Right? And then that helps me so much, because I'm like, oh, the ego would never tell me. Like, for example, I heard in journaling, I came up with this word avoiding. Like, let's stop avoiding. And I knew right away what this voice was talking about. I just don't see the ego wanting to tell me to stop avoiding, right? The ego wants me to avoid things. And so if you just check in, like, okay, is it loving or is it shaming? Is it is it from love or fear? Yeah, it's helped me so many times. Yeah.
And it's okay for it to be from fear. That's the other thing too. It's like, sometimes just learning to be present with ourselves is good. It's really good. It's like, even if I'm feeling afraid right now, it's okay for me to feel the experience of fear. It's okay for me to experience uncertainty. It's okay to be as you are right now. It's learning how to, this again goes back to capacity, right? It's our ability to recognize these are the experiences that I am having. Now, one of the things that I've learned many, many years ago is that feelings change, emotions, where there's an ebb and flow. We're up and we're down and we're all over the place in the course of 2 hours, right?
Yeah.
And so just being able to be present with ourselves, I think, is so much easier when we recognize that we are divinity in action, that we are love and peace, and all that is within us.
Yeah.
And so that all that is source is available to us at all times, all times. And there is no judgment. People are like, oh, God will judge. No, there is no judgment, because that is not what God is made of. What source is made of is simply love. And so there will always be acceptance and love and the connection that we so desperately are seeking.
Yeah, you have a really good point, and I want to make sure I say this before we end. If you are hearing the whispers of your intuition, and then all of a sudden fear comes, that doesn't mean you didn't hear it. Because the ego is going to resist the whisper of your intuition, of your soul. The ego wants you to stay the same as you've always been. So for me, many times I've heard the knowing and been like, oh, F, like, oh no, right? Like, oh, this is the knowing I have. This is going to ask more of me. Doesn't mean, because there's no rush, right? It's not pushing. I hear the whisper and then I like, oh, I've got some work to do. Or that means I'm going to need to tap into courage because fear is going to come with me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's what I would add to that.
Yeah. So we would love to hear what your experiences are with your intuition, whether you are trusting of yourself, and why are you not, if you are not trusting of yourself. And I think one of the big things that comes with trust is that the universe actually has your back. And so often we are so afraid to trust ourselves because of the implications of what it means to make a decision based on our deepest knowing. And your deepest knowing is that subtle whisper that you just know at the depth of your soul that you are in a good situation or in a bad situation, a good relationship or a not so good relationship for you, that at this depth, that this deep level within you, you have a knowing that it is okay for you to lean into that experience and to trust it because the universe has your back.
Yeah. I want to drop an affirmation from this mindset coach over here. If you are learning to trust your intuition, use that. I'm learning to trust my intuition. If you don't yet, yeah, I'm learning to trust my intuition. All right,
And that's a beautiful way to end.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I just want to shout out to Emily. Hi, Emily.
Hi,
I feel it in my
Emily.
stomach and my knees. Yeah. Oh, your knees. I hadn't even considered my knees. Like that's fascinating that you feel it there. Wow.
Ego thinks it protects but pulls from the past. Oh, yes.
Yeah. So the way that let's post this here. So ego thinks it protects, but it pulls from the past. Yeah. So ego pulls us out of the present space. It pulls us into the past. And past is usually guilt and shame. And then it also projects into the future. And future is fear. We don't know what's going to happen. We're afraid of what's going to happen. But what if this goes wrong, right? We're so good at thinking of all the ways that things could go wrong. And I have to tell you, we have to focus on what it is that we are aligning with and what it is that you want to see happen. And it's hard for me to say the word want because that comes from a place of lack. Instead, it's aligning with who you truly are. And in that space, in that place, you are already the things that you so desire.
Yeah, you are. So we'll end here, sending you lots of love. If you're catching the replay, please leave us, send us a message, leave us a comment. We'd like to hear from you. And what stirred within you as you listened to us talk about these two, neuroception and intuition. Yeah. And if you'd like to do your inner work with a community, we have a community called Love Being Community. And we can add the link after maybe into the YouTube. And you can apply to join us there. And we have lots of stuff going on in there. Lots of stuff from intuition to somatics and nervous system work, to trauma healing, breath work. There's so many different things going on. We have an upcoming book club. So yeah, if you are over there and doing this work by yourself, we invite you to join us.
Yep. Love to see you. Have a good rest of your Sunday.
Bye.